Right. So, welcome back, everybody, to the second day of RYV, the inaugural event of Electrical Minds Forum MEC. എൻ്റെ പേര് നസ്രീൻ കെ ബഷീർ. ഞാനൊരു സെക്കൻഡ് ഇയർ ഇന്നത്തെ ഹോസ്റ്റ് ഞാനായിരിക്കും. I'm sure that all of you enjoyed yesterday's session and I'm like pretty excited for today's one. And then the session it was like very interactive. I'm sure that all of you enjoyed it. So connecting with MECians always hits different is what I feel. എന്തിനെ പറ്റി സംസാരിക്കണേലും, be it about your college life at MEC, your work, your career prospects, and just various opportunities that comes your way. When you hear these experiences from an ex-MECian, നമുക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും പരിചയമുള്ള ഒരാളുടെയാണ്. When we're getting to hear that from someone we're familiar with, it feels very special. So, joining with us today for the second session of RYV is Aravind R. Menon. He is a marketer and content specialist with experience in B2B technology products and services. Having cut his teeth in the startup space, he's also dabbled in journalism, freelancing, growth marketing, social media, and nonprofit work. Aravind currently works as a senior marketing specialist at Mindcurve, a German company that revolutionizes digital platforms and cloud solutions. Back in the college days, he was the content manager for Excel and the co-organizer of TEDx MEC. So it is with immense pleasure that I welcome our guest of the day, Aravind R. Menon, to RYV. Hello.
Thank you, Nazrin. Thanks for the very warm welcome.
I'm really excited to have you here today. I'm looking forward to a very interactive session. So
sure thing. Sounds great.
So before we just start with today's session, I'd just like to let our viewers know that നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എന്തെങ്കിലും questions അരവിന്ദന്റെ അടുത്ത് ചോദിക്കാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ in between the event or എന്തെങ്കിലും questions എന്തെങ്കിലും പറയണമെങ്കിൽ just raise your hand using the option that's in Zoom, or else you can put the questions in the chat box and I'll definitely get to you. I think in the viewers we had a very interactive session, so you guys know how to do that, but still I'm just letting you all know. So Aravind, I guess we can start with our session for today.
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Let's start with MEC then. So MEC, what were the activities you were involved in college that prepared you for a marketing career? As an MEC in the institution, has that played a role in developing your marketing skills?
MEC institution as such, it's actually a tough question to answer. So I was involved in a lot of things. Debate club I was one of the founding, not exactly the founding, top guys, but second year, first year, I started. Eventually I was the secretary of it now, but I was very active in that. We still have the debate club going. I don't know if there are people here. D.E.B.A. Okay. Yeah, that's, there are so many clubs going around. So, okay, cool. So that was a really nice place to talk to a lot of people. And basically a place for eccentrics to just kind of interact and stuff. That was one thing. But apart from that, how MEC contributed, I would say that the most important, if you're in MEC, and this is something I've noticed about people in MEC after my college days also, okay? I've gone for recruiting and all, while I was working for my previous company. So the people within MEC, the kids coming out of MEC, they have got this belief in the it's like a unique thing. I won't say it's entirely just unique to MEC. Maybe it's broader than that, but the people from it's definitely something MECians have. So in the given enough time, given enough of bandwidth, they will figure it out. Finally the thing gets done, and it's actually that resilience, that kind of persistence. Our spirit is something that's it's a huge advantage. So whatever you go for, and that spirit is something that I picked up probably in MEC. It's not like something that somebody gives you, obviously, but it's just atmosphere settings. Like when you're in a college, it's essentially like a smaller than most big college hostels. Yeah. You definitely have to do something differently. Maybe it's something that we all walk away with. I don't know, but I think that's what helped me the most.
It did play a role.
Yeah. I can't just say that. See, my life so far and my career so far, everything's like a series of random accidents. I was just telling you about this earlier, so I can't just say that that didn't have a there were some bad decisions which led me to certain places, and there were some good decisions that led me to certain places. So MEC did have a role. There's no doubt, because I met a lot of people. I got a lot of opportunities through MEC, because of MEC. Maybe because MEC was very proximal to the startup village back in, I mean, the KSUM, but back in my day it was called Startup Village, right next door. So that was a big advantage. The staff that I had a good relationship with, our department, I don't know if people are here, Shaja ma'am, Arun sir, and Vidya ma'am, and people like that. Very supportive folks. So I was not academically really good, but innalum, like, they respected the fact that I knew what I wanted to do. They respected the fact that I had a handle on my life. Kind of situation, they were able to understand. So yeah, MEC did have a role, no doubt about it.
That's great to know. So, okay, next question, Narendra. I think it's something that most of our audience would like to hear. And that's also something that I would like to hear. So, when did you realize that engineering is not your passion? And how did you find your path after on?
Oh yeah, that I know, absolutely know. First series exam in the first year. That's when I knew engineering is not my thing. I was like very clear. So before then, I'm from Cochin Refinery School. I did very well in my academics in school, and 12th standard, like decent marks. I went for entrance coaching in Talents, which probably everybody sort of Talents India. Yeah. So I've gone for intensive batch, which is essentially the IIT batch and all. The sir you shouldn't go for engineering because you're going to really struggle. I was like, hey, no, I can handle it. And then disregarding that advice, I wrote entrance and stuff like that. But I wanted to do, and this is not because I knew everything, the in and out of engineering. You're 18 years old, somebody tells you this is what you should go study, you just go and study. My parents said engineering, right? And then I've got a couple of uncles who studied engineering, and they also supported that. And somebody told me that electrical engineering is a core subject and maybe you should go for electrical engineering. And finally, yes, okay, electrical engineering. But turned out that was like super tough, and that is a different story altogether. Yeah. But first series exam, I mean, class I was performing, like, people, I mean, there were concepts being explained. First year, foreign other books.
Yeah, you get the list and full.
Very relatable, right? So yeah, like my classmates and I are sitting here and listening to Feynman's lectures on physics and crazy stuff like that. Okay. And first year engineering, first series exam, that was like a big shock. Like, our school things that were so easy, but I'm scoring, I'm getting marks in single digits. I'm like, what the shit is happening? Like, what happened? And that's when I realized, like, some of them really picked up from there. Like, some people took it as a slap on their face, a wake up call. They worked harder. Some of my batchmates, they're in really good places, technical roles and stuff like that. For me, it was like a bucket of water was thrown on me, and somebody was telling me, "Yeah, this is it. Stop it." That's when I realized engineering is not my cup of tea.
So when you realize that a unstable position, you just joined in for engineering, you realize this is not your cup of tea. So how did you like figure out what next in the stage? How did you figure that out?
So okay, so at that point, I seriously considered dropping out. Like, I was like, adhigam time poetly. At the most, I'm going to lose a year. I can still go and apply to some other college. But then, again, at that age, you really don't know what are the other options. You didn't have internet access, and not like this right now. We had phones, smartphones, and stuff like that. But 1 GB of data, 2 GB of data, you ration it for a whole month. I don't know if people, I mean, if they can relate to that kind of a time. But that's what we used to do. I mean, you've got like unlimited 1000 GB of internet, and 1000 GB of internet is like probably 3 years worth of supply. I'm like, that's crazy. We didn't have information like that, and there weren't maybe people to tell us what to do next. I was stuck definitely. In the cheyum ennoru answer enakku something was that I started off engineering, right? I wanted to finish it. Maybe the ahangaram kind of finish, but I wanted to finish it. And that kept me going. But also, eventually, maybe not immediately, but gradually, I kind of realized that with engineering, I just don't have to be an engineer, like actually doing engineering. I can work in related fields. So that's something that I should mention straight away, that studying engineering taught me a lot of things, because I'm able to understand technology pretty well, right? In engineering, I can't I understand IoT, right? I understand how electronics works. I understand how power management works. I understand how digital platforms, e-commerce, all those things. I understand it.
So what, like a
I don't know
surface
how
knowledge
to.
on, yeah.
Yeah. I can talk to you about it. I can hold a conversation about it. I can't actually sit down, write 3 pieces of code and get something to appear on screen. I can't do that. I can't put together a circuit and make a robot run. I cannot do this, but I can talk about it. And our level of knowledge, which then my next question to answer was, can I do something with this? And that's what I ended up eventually doing. So because I'm from an engineering background, it has helped me in my career. So right now, I'm working in a space is technology marketing, right? Technology marketing for B2B companies, B2C companies. But technology marketing is a very tough space. It's because it's not like advertising. It's not like you're talking to a general audience. You're talking to a very specific, very well-educated set of people who understand this is something that they want to get. So the conversations that they need to have, it cannot be done by somebody who doesn't have this context. Like somebody who's studied maybe commerce and then arts and something like that. If he writes a piece of copy or maybe drafts an email that says, hey, my company can do this for you, straight away, that, okay, this guy has no idea why should I listen to him? But in their contextual understanding, it's really played a part. So that's essentially how, I mean, we'll get to specific points in that journey, I'm guessing, over our interaction, but it did play a part.
That's nice. So next thing is like something I'd like to ask you from your marketing life. Did you have a failed experience from your marketing life? As in, anganthara situation vannapol vannittundenkil, how did you deal with it? And ellarum parayalo, from these experiences that you get to learn a lot. So can you tell us about one such experience that you had and something that you learned from that particular experience?
Plenty of them. Maybe I should tell you a little bit about how my journey to marketing went first.
Yes.
So I mean, you get some little more timeline and context. So 2014 is when I joined engineering, and as I said, the first series exam. So around December, I ran the first series exam, and that was like, okay, not working. So next thing is 2015, I have to do something. A couple of people from my college, obviously. There were a few people who were doing an internship, Startup Village, a company. Okay, this company is called Rabitech Technologies. They were into embedded systems and other services, software services, website designing, very rudimentary things. They were also working on a product that was an IoT based product for indoor mapping and hyperlocal marketing. Hyperlocal marketing was a concept that was like kind of had become a big deal. So it's like this: if you walk into Lulu Mall and you want what you want to buy. So if Nasrin wants to buy a pair of shoes, right? You go and see the first shop and you go see the second shop maybe, but you're not going to Apple's and find out. You're not going to compare which brand gives you the best discount or something like that.
No.
Hyperlocal marketing system is essentially something that you can deploy in a closed space like this. Right? A beacon based kind of a sambhava. You put it into every shop and then you have an app on your phone. So the minute you walk in and the minute you insert what you want, I mean, like you type it into your phone, that shoes are what you're looking for, every store in that mall that has shoes to offer you, right? They get a ping that a potential customer is there.
Okay.
And they can entice you. So they can send you an offer in real time. They can tell you, okay, we've got a promotion going on. We offer warranties like this. Some kind of communication, push notification. So this was a grand idea. This particular startup, I heard it through a couple of seniors and they invited me to, maybe join them and work content for them. Content writing essentially. So see, I didn't know the first thing about content writing at that point, but a Startup Village into the beauty of it was that basically a set of, I mean, if you've been to KSU, you would know, like a set of parallel desks. You've got like startups working in clumps. Like desk, that's like a startup. It's like that. So if you don't know something, you just ask the other guy. I'm like, Chata, please, can you just show me a brochure? Oh, this is what a brochure looks like. I copy it. Right? Oh, can you show me how an email works, or WordPress works? And pick up. This product never took off because there were bugs, there were go-to-market issues on that. We and all of us are kids, like people working there a few years older than me. First product working, it failed. Okay, it failed miserably. The company had to shut down a few years ago. But our learning experience was immense. I learned. For example, I had experiences that were like Nyangalda company CEO. There would be a situation where I would be working with them to create a pitch deck for an investor. and next day I'd be working on something to talk to a client about, right? So you're involved in each and every little granular aspect, right? So that's the advantage of working in such a small company, particularly in a startup. So you're very agile. You've got like a finger in every pie. So it's really fun also. I really enjoyed it. And I wasn't doing an internship there. I wasn't working freelance. I was actually working there full time. Like, so after college, I would go there, sit till 7:00, 7:30, and then go. So every day I would spend like 3-4 hours. That was my thing.
Okay.
I had a seat there. I had a seat and stuff. So that kind of an experience really opened my eyes. And I started understanding, okay, potentially I can get into a career, right? That gives me some happiness. I really enjoy the work. It was like a series of things. Online, I did some journalism because I'm good at English. Sort of like I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything, but I'm kind of good. Okay. So I'm not a very passionate writer. I'm not like somebody who pours out emotions. I can write. You tell me to write something, I can do that. But if you ask me to write a philosophical something, I can't do that.
All right.
I wanted to explore journalism because there was a factor about reporting. Like, it was a factual knowledge and understanding what really happened. There was that investigative tint to it. So I did some college wala journalism for a year or so. Worked with 2 companies, one called Tech Story, another called Edenbox. They both Edenbox in Karelia, but Tech Story is still up and around. They're still doing work. So one was with technology, the other was with education. Same time I signed up for an NGO to make a difference. They're still around.
Yes, still around.
I worked with them for a year. I worked as an educational support volunteer. So essentially I was sampling everything. Can I make it as a journalist? Can I make it as a teacher? Can I make it as, in the non-profit things? Is that something I enjoy? And I also did a lot of technology internships. Even though I hated it, absolutely. Embedded system internship, electronics, computer science. I worked with just wanted to, because what, like, I've heard people say that that you do in the industry. So what if I ultimately like it? So I tested it out. I tested everything out, and I absolutely was certain that this is not for me. I like marketing. I like telling stories. I like telling people why they should buy something, why they should opt for something, how do customers educate. That really drives me. So that's how I kind of got into it. And all of these things, there have been failures. Okay, there have been smaller failures where, like, maybe you screwed up something which you were supposed to deliver. There have been major issues where I forgot to add a slide deck. I forgot to add a certain slide to a slide deck that was sent to an investor, and we lost a round of investment because of that. But I was a kid, right? I was an 18-year-old kid, and that's the thing with startup. You can make mistakes. It's okay. You get chances. So there have been things like that. And when our product failed, that was sad. Of course it was sad, because we had worked on it for 1.5 years. The idea itself was really nice. It was just that we took too long to come out with something that's actually working. And by that time, Amazon and Flipkart and all are caught up. And who goes to malls anymore? If you want a shoe, just Google it. So our situation at the end. So yeah, there have been disappointments, but all of these have been learning experiences.
Okay.
After this stint of journalism, after this thing, I worked for a company in Singapore. Singapore-based, it was like a management consultancy, but for small scale industries, for SMEs. Essentially what they did is they would help people digitally transform. So get on like a brick and mortar shop, for example, if you're a tailor or something like that. If you want to get online, provide a website, provide a online shopping, kind of some, right? So stuff like that. So the team was based in Singapore, but they had a small technology team in Cochin. So when I was so with them, I was on one part I was like a growth marketer. I was talking to clients, creating material that clients could read and understand. On the other side, I was coordinating with the technology team, where they what is the client's requirement in the business analyst kind of role. So break that market or business concept into a technology goal, that kind of a thing. And that really helped me understand how the technology industry worked. Like developers. So developers, I'm nothing against developers, but developers can't tell stories, right? They can do things. You tell them to do something, they will do it. They're very executionary. But like, how does this, where does this fit into the entire thing? That's something that maybe that's a visibility that they lack. I understood this very early on, and that made my role a lot more defined. So I understood what I had to do. My job was to tell stories to people which the technology team couldn't, which the technical experts couldn't. So that's why you need marketing. That's why you need people to tell you stories, right? That's what we do in marketing. So ingante experiences has really helped me. So this last one, this Singapore thing, that was in my third year and fourth year. Fourth year fourth year കഴിഞ്ഞവരെ അതുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് I worked for a company called Tismo in Bangalore for 2 years, and now I'm with Mindcurve. So
it's all been learning experiences.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you learn something new every day. So
okay,
is it just me or is Nasreen stuck?
Hello, is it okay now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what I was going to ask you was that what is your opinion on career prospects in marketing? Like, is it growing or diminishing? Ippalthe situation endana?
Career prospects?
Yeah.
Well, there are plenty. There are like lots and lots and lots. So when you say marketing, what do you mean? Do you actually mean marketing in the sense of what the traditional kind of marketing or the new age kind of marketing or?
I think we'll have to focus on the new age kind of marketing because future, if we have to look more into the future, we'll have to consider that.
Okay. No, maybe I can shed some light on this. So marketing can mean different things for different people. So if you're working for a FMCG kind of a company, like Pidilite company or Hindustan Unilever, right? They're creating a lot of things. So biscuits and soap and whatever, tea, chaya.
Yes.
So these things need to get to shops and people buy from there. Our marketing team, the role is to get these things to the shops, our distribution, to meet certain targets, to make sure that it's positioned properly. So that's a different type of visibility. You need to understand what customer sentiment is. B2C, another customers, and what do they feel about your brand? What do they think about the quality of your product, for example? Are you properly getting feedback? So that's one type. Pinna the B2B marketing, that's the space I'm in. So you're talking directly to, you're selling things to companies.
All right.
And more there is a lot of demand for people to step in and customize. Like everybody wants a very unique experience. So see, you and I are now used to shopping online, right?
Yes.
The customers, everybody is shopping on Amazon or some platform like that. When they switch on their work laptop and they want to buy something for a company, for their company. So if I'm working for a company that is installing solar panels, I need to order 10,000 solar panels from my manufacturer. I don't want to place it letter memo. I want to do it online. I want an online shop for it now. And that opens up opportunities. So it is no longer that somebody who's sitting right next to me, same district supply, the game's changed. You can be sitting in Australia and then sending me solar panels for whatever reason. But the fact is I need to understand that there is somebody in Australia who's creating better solar panels or better for me in whatever context. So definitely there are more and more opportunities, especially in this. Yeah, especially in this customization kind of a thing. It's all about hyper customization. Everybody wants a very unique hand-holding experience. So yeah, there are plenty of opportunities.
It's definitely growing. So just one slide reminder to our audience. If you have any doubts or anything of the sort, just yes, we got one. We got it. Hisham, you've got a doubt. You can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello.
Hi, Hisham.
Yeah,
yes, you are audible.
Yeah, okay. So I actually wanted to ask,
what if you said, right, there are types of marketing and types of stuff that you do, right? I wanted to know what the exact types of marketing out there is. Like, does that make sense? It's all about target making and itra sales നടത്തണം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ okay, I'm taking an electronics brand, right? So how would you market that? The thing that the company is looking for might be the sales or the figures or the hard facts, right? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ investors like, how do you convince the people, okay, our product is really good, you have to get this?
Okay. Okay, so two things here. One is that what you're talking about is not just marketing, that's also business development. You're talking about sales and business development also.
Okay.
But now to your specific question around marketing, how do you market this, right? See, in marketing, your objective is not to say that I am great. Okay, it's not that.
Okay.
The objective is to make sure that what I have is the best fit for you. So my question as a marketer would be, what is your pain point? Like, what are you missing right now? What is your gap right now? Like, do you have a problem with the electronic appliance, whatever appliance it is? Is there a problem with it right now? Is there like a better experience that you should be getting that you're not getting currently? I need to understand these things first. And then I would position myself. Then I should say that, see, I am the guy or I'm the brand that has got that product which fills this gap for you. So you position it like that. So it's not about saying that I'm the best out there. So that is okay if you're selling something very generic. So it's like a smartphone. Everybody's got a smartphone and everybody wants another smartphone. Now within that itself, you have to ask a question of what is your price point? What is your what kind of features you're looking for? Are you looking for a very luxury kind of Angantu brand? Are you looking for something very utilitarian? So people have different requirements, right? So if I'm coming up with a new smartphone, there is no sense in me trying to say, okay, I can go and compete against Samsung, because Samsung's got a phone for every brand. I mean, every price range. They've got like a phone that works in any scenario. What I would rather do is to identify one group of people who don't specifically have a phone right now. They've got some issue accessing a phone right now. And maybe I sell it specifically to them. So for example, if so business applications, lots of companies are buying phones, right? Now they buy in bulk. They buy such that a lot of customizations are there. Maybe I can cater my marketing efforts to them specifically. So the business smartphone, under how BlackBerry was, so it could be the business smartphone of tomorrow. So it would have to be case by case, of course. But the thing to remember is it's not about saying you're the best. It's about saying what the customer needs and trying to position there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So I have one more follow-up question. Okay, like when you're talking about this, that was what came to my mind. Okay, suppose if I'm a hypermarket, right? When we go to a hypermarket, okay, there are tons of generic stuff out there, right? If I'm TV edukkanengil, there are tons of TVs, washing machines, fridges. It's all basically the same features, right? So if it were up to you, how would you market something that is very generic? Yeah.
So generic products is that people already understand everything there is to know about it. So if it's a washing machine, every washing machine does the same thing, right? It doesn't really do much differently. I can, of course, to add-on feature would come. I can say, okay, it's very silent, or I can say it's very, it does this with your silver technology. I can put some feature like that. And you can try to differentiate a little bit like that. But in the kind of generic products, the large brands always make a difference. And brands don't work in terms of products. They work in terms of customer sentiment. So brands talk about trust. They talk about value for money. They talk about larger concepts like that. So if LG, for example, LG is life's good. It's all about making your life good. It's about giving you a better lifestyle. It's about giving you access to something that you don't have right now. So you're not buying an LG washing machine. You're buying something that's going to make your life better. So that customer sentiment is what they play on. So every brand will have something like that, right? And that's moving into the story, brand story and branding on your domain. So how do you retain the brand? How do you make sure that your brand is this is the message that your brand is conveying out to the audience? It's into that domain. So specifically for the generic appliances and generic products, brands always, this brand messaging comes into play. Make sense?
Okay, then how would you develop a struggling brand? Okay, yeah. If you said LG is there, Samsung is there. Mobiles case, this is something that I've always wanted. If mobiles in the case, if I go into a room with an Apple phone, everyone is like, oh, Apple. But if I go in with a Redmi or an Oppo, it's like, Redmi, Oppo. Like, how exactly do you bring up the brand value of a company? Of a normal company that doesn't have much, revenue or something.
So it's not, it's not like a, answer because, there's a lot of things that go on in the background, but maybe this makes sense.
Right.
What does Apple say to you? Apple says premium, more and more exclusive every year. So, and Panda Apple was just a phone, and they created our MacBooks in a cloud environment and such that now it's about an Apple environment, an ecosystem complete. if you think about it, Apple is like a phone that you cannot connect to other things. Like it makes your life very difficult. But our business model peculiarity another. They want more people to adopt more Apple devices. If you buy an Apple phone, the next page is see you already have an Apple phone, so it makes sense for you to buy an Apple laptop, and it makes sense. And gradually everybody moves into that Apple environment. That's the business model. But how do they get people into that business model? They talk about this premium, right? The premium thing. That's Apple for you. So what do you feel when you see somebody has got an Apple phone? It's that premium thing. There might be something unique that every brand can say, right? It can be maybe about quality. It can be about reliability. It could be about maybe it's just that's very cost effective. So if you're a college kid and you want to change your phone every year, maybe it's about it being cheap. I don't know. So whatever that brand story is, that's not something you can have or you can come up with in a conversation just like that. But it's something very crucial. So whatever brand you're building, whatever company you're building, understanding what your brand says is very important. So it's something that you need to have a conversation about earlier in your, our roadmap. Does that make sense? And say, I've got a brilliant idea. You have to understand if this idea makes sense for your audience, right? Either pain point or not. And and there is validation like this, right? If customers are saying, okay, this thing is really going to change my life, then great, you've got a really good product idea. Then how do you want to sell it? Do you want to sell it as a thing that solves that, or do you want some
event or something like that? It's like everyone will be willing to pop in, or everyone would be willing to try it out or something like that. But now people are just tired. Like I don't know if you'll get it, but
I get that. Fatigue, I think people call it online fatigue.
Yeah, online fatigue, exactly. So how exactly, like this is advice from me as well, how exactly would you suggest to market something so to ensure that people at least open it or click it or something like that?
So we had this trouble last year, the company I work for. Because of COVID and because of everything moving online, we had to come up with some kind of a differentiator to make sure that people were still interested, right? Webinar, we progressively understood that Aditya webinar and all the people were very enthusiastic, as you said. But they were like, pinne online, they're getting bored. So when it came around last year, Christmas, we designed a Christmas campaign, which made it more interactive. So we gave them an option to interact with the process itself. So the idea was that it would be we would give them gifts, but not gifts for them, gifts for their kids. What they had to do is open up an email, go into that email and choose a particular gift. So you click on a button, it takes you to like an online shop all through Salam, where you can click a particular gift and then add a promo code and you get that delivered to your house, right? But these are a few steps. We want people to get into this. We had to personalize it. We had to make sure that the messaging that we were sending out to each of these people made sense. It made sense from their context. So existing relationship or it's easier. So if I know you for some time, Hisham, and I know what your interests are, what kind of things you like to talk about, then I can specifically reach out to you and say that, hey, I know you like talking about this. Look at this. Christmas campaign. I think you might like this. Just check it out and then I can do it. But when it's a more generic audience, then you have to bank on certain things. And this is like a hit or a miss kind of a situation. You try out different strategies. So sometimes it's about, it might be about the messaging itself. It might be, okay, Christmas, Anna, it's the time of love and sharing and gifting. So hence a gift. It might be messaging like that. Sometimes it might be about timing. If we reach out to them at a particular time when they really are looking forward to a gift, maybe that makes sense. So we had to experiment with a few ideas like this. But ultimately, it wasn't a grand success, but we did have enough of an interaction. We made it a little interactive. We got some participation, and so we were quite happy with it. Again, kind of like a learning for us. I don't think a solution as such exists for this. It's not like, okay, do step 1 through 5 and then get rid of online fatigue. It doesn't work like that. But it's something that we deal with, and you kind of have to work around.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hisham. Now, Aravind, we've got like one question in the chat from Ruben. So this is what he's asking. Did you ever feel like you wanted to drop out after your first year and then join a course which was more focused on marketing? Okay.
I did feel like dropping out, but I hadn't already decided marketing by then. I hadn't considered that.
You were trying out
Um,
options.
I was trying out options, and in my mind, if I were to join a course, it was something like English literature no ponam, history പഠിക്കണം, because I love history. Okay, I wanted to
Okay.
go study civics and political science and stuff like that, and അങ്ങനെ കുറെ ചിന്തകളൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. But I don't know, it never really worked out. Because maybe after a while I quickly learned or kind of arrived at the fact that I like this. I like storytelling, and I found that it's something I could do. I kind of had like a idea as to what could be next, or where this could go. I stuck with it, I guess. Does that make sense, Ruben?
Okay, maybe Ruben will put that in the chat. And about the courses related to marketing, like MBA pole consider ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടോ Arvind?
So I've not done an MBA. Okay, I've not done an MBA because I've got supplies. And the supplies is കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടില്ല. I've got still 2 more. And I mean, at one point I had 13 supplies, and for the so I want to finish it off. I might do an MBA. I might do it eventually, but I'm very specific why I want to do an MBA. The reason I want to do an MBA is so that I get access to leadership positions. So people do MBA for different reasons, right? Some people do it because they don't like the bugs, you're writing code, whatever it is, you don't like it. And MBA gives you an option to switch. Okay, first of all, in India, MBA is not really the MBA. It's a PGDM course. Outside of India, there is a lot of emphasis on what experience you have. India ladilla. So if anybody wants to switch careers and stuff like that, it's a little easier in India. You can do an MBA and get placed somewhere. People do it for a salary bump also. Like you finish an MBA, then some nice company picks you up another placement package. That's something obvious. And then you can always do an MBA so that you get access to more opportunities in leadership. So some companies have like an entry barrier. If you want to really get into another role, like senior manager angantu role, then you need an MBA ennulla entry barrier alkar undu. And also it helps you learn a lot of strategies, as well as things like how to optimize certain workflows. Like MBA is shirikum useful avuna karyangal is how to prioritize, like how to prioritize your task, how much effort should I spend for each task, that kind of an analytical understanding. And also definitely the network that you make, ingane kore advantages undu. So yeah, eventually I will do it, but not immediately anyway.
Okay. We've got like one more question from the audience. It's from Stephen. How much time did you spend in each field when you were going between internships?
Between internships, so when technical kind of internships are anywhere between like a few days to maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe 1 month. So I remember there was like a training program kind of thing, and 3-4 days in there, and there were like 2 weeks or like 3 week internship that I did in Bangalore for electronics design. പിന്നെ embedded system അതുപോലെ തന്നെ another shorter internship ഞാൻ അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. Apart from that, but the other work that the non-tech it was much longer. I stuck with it because I enjoyed it more. At least a year, maybe 2 years, couple of years. So online journalism it was like a year and a half or so. Rabitech and I was with them for like about 2 years, and the other one, Bizinox, I was with them for a year and a half. Some of these were concurrent, obviously, but I did stick with it. The roles were different in each, so that's why I did it concurrently.
All right. I think that's another question from Stephen. Is doing many internships your advice for someone who is still lost as to what they should go ahead with their career? Okay.
Is doing many internships what I advise? I wouldn't say that. See, first of all, I wouldn't say that people should follow what I did. Okay, I won't. I don't know. Hi Jairam. Hi Arvind. Good to see you. Okay, Jairam from college. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not saying that people should follow exactly what I did, because njan cheyidana kore ill effects undu. I've had like so many supplies. I've had and because of that, people are like, oh, okay, that kind of perception will be there, as long as you've got the guts to get over that. I don't care what other people think about me. If you've got that guts, and also if like definitely companies placements and issue. Companies have a CGPA cutoff, let alone supply opportunity is very low, so issues are down. So you need confidence. You need to understand that you can pull something off. If you do a lot of internships but if you're not committing to any one thing, that's a value advantage in the very what I would advise is to try to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. That's something that really helped me. I know exactly what I can do, what I cannot do, and it's something that helps me to this day. So if you ask me to accomplish something, I can straight off tell you, okay, at least if I have a long shot at doing it, I can say, okay, I can give it a shot and but there are some things I know absolutely right? So I'm very bad at drawing. I'm good at visualizing. I'm very bad at drawing. So if somebody asks me to sketch out something, no way, I can't do this. Okay.
Okay.
And I mean, it might be a small thing like that. It might be about a character trait. It might be about understanding what you can, what are the things you can put up with. So I know that other people's opinions, it only matters so much for me than confidence. So for that matter, it was all right. But if it's not like that, external validation, maybe something is not the right choice for you. Is doing internships, is that my specific advice? I wouldn't really say so. Yes, you might get lucky. You might like one of the roles that you do and give it a shot, and you make a life out of it. You make a career out of it. Maybe that works out, but it's not like a silver bullet. It doesn't give. There's no 100% guarantee.
It depends on how you are, and
and a lot of luck. And a lot of luck, like an opportunity, then you have to be really lucky, right? For me, luck was a big factor. Me being in Cochin at the time when Startup Village was starting out, and factors and there's no, I can't just say this because I was 100% hardworking. I'm not at all hardworking. I'm a very lazy guy. I'm like, if there's an easy way to do it, I try to get that easy way out. But if you work hard enough, you can. Yeah, something I believe in is that if you work hard enough and if you really have some substance, you can be prepared to jump on any opportunity that luck throws your way. So if like there were instances where like in career switch so it's not like I was preparing for a job change. So I got placed into a company called Tismo, but Tismo, company, they still hire from our college, and when I was with Tismo, I've come hiring out of MEC. I had so many supplies back then. Tismo is a very strict no supply rule, at least back in those days in Darano. I was presenting something, like I was doing a presentation about Excel to Tismo. Like if Excel you go and present to companies and say that, hey, you're doing this nice fest, please sponsor us. Yeah. Because I was working for companies, my pitch was different. The way I created a presentation, the way I was creating the narrative, that was different. They liked that. They offered me a role, right? I was in a position to jump on that opportunity. Skill sets and I don't know, right? So that helped me. When I moved to Mindcurve, it was the same thing. I was ready to jump on that opportunity. So in the matter of a week, I was able to transition from one job to the other. So that would be my advice: is prepare yourself so that you can jump on any opportunity that luck throws your way.
Okay. Yes.
Jairam has asked something. What is
yes. He's asked something. Have you ever faced any stigma from society for changing career paths?
Of course.
Post engineering or for doing something different? Also, did someone pressurize you not to drop out and change course?
Okay, so first part of the question, have I faced stigma? Definitely. I mean, I've actually had people like the friends, the parents. Okay, I'm working in marketing. Okay. And I mean, I earn more than them. I enjoy what I do, and not a lot of people can say this. A lot of people always complain about their work. I love what I do. I can do this till the end of time. I'm very happy with it. But I mean, our priorities only. So have I faced stigma? Yes. There is if I'm going to technical course non-tech the technical guys would be like not good enough to make it as an engineer. That would be there. And there's this God psychology, like we know everything, we are the experts in the psychology. Engineer, I know this, but engineers in the work there'll definitely be that. But then as long as you can do your stuff and you can deliver quality, those things don't matter. Did somebody pressurize me not to drop out? Well, my parents were not supportive. Right? My parents were not at all supportive. They were not at all supportive of me trying out something else. That's a different story. They were like, just study even harder. So maybe you'll like it.
Okay.
So they were like, absolutely no way. I'll say then college and I've gotten into major fights with them. And see, the thing is, you need a sort of ഒരു ധൈര്യം വേണം to say that right now I've got nothing, like I'm holding no cards, but if I do this, ഇങ്ങനെ കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങൾ ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ eventually I'll make it എന്ന് പറയാനായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു, and to believe in that, no, അതിനൊരു ധൈര്യം വേണം. Nobody will back you up at that point. So you can be as convincing as you want, but people will not be convinced. And for നമ്മുടെ പേരൻസിനെ പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല, because they were brought up in a time when security and having a job, those things are huge, right? അപ്പോൾ അവർക്ക് it's not like this work hard, study hard, you well,
yeah.
You always believed in you.
From the beginning.
That's different.
Yeah.
But now they've really changed. My mom is like sad about me not having a degree and stuff, but still she understands. She knows that I like what I do, and she respects the fact that I'm good at what I do and stuff like that. So yeah.
All right. So
that answers the question, Jera.
that answers the question. So okay, I don't think like our audience if questions it if they put something, we'll go to them. Okay, so Arvind, you told that you've come back to college as a recruiter. So adinde oru experience endayirunno? How did you feel, after coming back to MEC, interview nekkumbo?
It was actually very fun. It was really fun. Okay. So njan first time MEC lo vannathu was in August of 2018.
Okay.
August or September of 2018. Okay. ഞാൻ 2018 ഞാൻ കോളേജ് കഴിഞ്ഞ് പോകുന്നത്. സോ എനിക്ക് classes got over in March. I had exams. Classes got over in March, and then we had our exams, semester 8 exams ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് we had this, so we were the last batch of QSAT. So we had like a marathon supply പരിപാടി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, which is like എല്ലാ വർഷത്തെയും supply നമുക്ക് ഒരുമിച്ച് എഴുതാന്ന് പറയാം. It's like a blessing and a curse. You're getting an extra chance to write a supply, but the problem
is it all comes together, right?
Oh my god, it's a nightmare. Like if you have ഒരു സപ്ലൈ ഉള്ള ആൾക്കാർ കുഴപ്പമില്ല. It's like one exam that you write. എനിക്ക് അങ്ങനെ ആയിരുന്നില്ല. I had like so many to do. So it was like ഇന്ന് രാവിലെ I have like S8 S6 ആ പേപ്പർ, നാളെ എനിക്ക് S4 ഈ പേപ്പർ, മറ്റന്നാൾ like because all of these things are happening concurrently. It was crazy shit. അപ്പോ അത് was so by the time
how did that work out for you?
Well, I was able to pass some papers, not all of them obviously, but some of them കുഴപ്പമില്ലായിരുന്നു. So അത് May അവസാനം വരെ അങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു. May 27th, I think 27th, 28th was my last thing, and then TISMO my joining date was June 4th. So എനിക്കൊരു ബ്രേക്ക് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. So അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് അപ്പം തന്നെ ഞാൻ പോയി went to join TISMO, worked there for a few months, and August ആകുമ്പോൾ റിക്രൂട്ട്മെന്റ് തിരിച്ചു വന്നു കേട്ടോ. We started off recruiting in other colleges. ആദ്യം CET-ലേക്ക് പോയി, TKM-ൽ പോയി, പിന്നെയാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇവിടെ മോഡൽ വന്നത്. മോഡൽ വന്നപ്പോഴത്തേക്കും like somebody told the placements la samayathu that there is some ഏതോ ഒരു XMEC വരുന്നത്, ആരാന്ന് അറിഞ്ഞില്ല അവര്. So it's like I just got out of the car because the college arranged. I mean, we came in a car, and then placements will book it varilo. But they saw me and they were like, "Oh, thanano." That was really you. So that was really fun.
Okay.
And the experience is really nice. I mean, you get to sit on the other side of the table. See, I've never actually been able to sit for placements. I've only sat for like one company, and that was Kalki Tech. Because of obviously supplies, and Kalki Tech didn't have a problem with supplies, I think. And our exam I clear idu, but because I'd already got an offer from TISMO, I told them like, see, I already have this. The exam koran mumbai edidana, that is why I'm showing up for the interview. I don't want to leave you having the parent. So but I remember helping out a lot of my friends with aptitude questions and comprehension questions, and essentially how to prepare for an interview, how to prepare for the reading. So I know the apprehensions that kids have when they're like, there's a brief time before getting into an interview room where everyone is like, their hearts are beating out of their chest.
Yeah.
And I enjoy calming them down. I enjoy telling people that, hey, it's okay, man. Don't make too much of a big deal out of it. Even if you don't get it. See, interviews are about if it's a good fit, right? It's not about you're the best or you're the second best. It's about this company's got certain priorities. You've got certain priorities. Do they align? Do they match? Angi matra you get a job. It doesn't mean that you're good or bad. So it's like that. So I really had a really nice time. It was a fun experience. On a lighter note, my college Andy Marley. So you know how we dress up very well for the interview. So I'm full sleeve shirt. So lunch break, and I was just wandering around college and department was coming down, and then Andy Marley kandu. Appo njangal company aanu school college aanappo thanne, and they're like, mone in the supply exam undo ennu parayanu. So like so it's like a proper mixed bag. It was really fun.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
I come 2 years, in 2018 and 19 vannittund. It was really nice.
That's nice. So Rishikesh has a question for you. Did you have to interview someone you knew? If yes, how did that go?
I mean, see, I came to interview my direct juniors and 1 year juniors. So I had like lots of friends there.
Yeah.
So my interview was not, so I wasn't sitting as a panel. My job was to interview their HR side, right? So,
Alright.
so for MEC students, it was a double-edged sword because I knew their potential. I knew what they could do, but sometimes they're nervous, so that doesn't come out. So I'm able to give input like that to their recruiters. So see, if they are little nervous, but you know, these guys, I know what these guys are capable of. Kind of thing. That was there. And the other thing is like, I know people are pretending also. I know people who are like actual jackasses who are like putting on a nice show here. So that's also a problem. But yeah, but interviews were quite nice. It was, see, interviews are all about, it's not about how many questions you answer. It's about, do you have the willingness? Do you have the attitude? Right? I mean, I'm not saying that interview obviously not, but it's good enough if you try, right? If you try to get to a solution, if you try to answer a question, it's about, you know, being able to say that, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer this right now, but maybe I can go back and get back to you with the solution. That's good enough. Our attitude is good enough. That's it's not a good thing to do. I had a lot of learning experiences like that during the interviews as well. So it was overall another dress.
It is fun, huh? Okay. Yeah. So one more question. Do you have any tips for non-tech interviews? You know, juniors
non-tech interviews, so
yeah,
like non-tech interviews like any specific roles that
as in like non-tech when you appear for an interview college final year
sure.
Just some tips that you recruiters look for.
Yeah, got it. So see, first thing is that people don't look for right answers, they look for right approaches. And people to stress themselves too much, or they cram too much information into their brains and solve algorithm, sorting algorithm and all those things. At the end of the day, in that interview, our thing, no, that just weighs for one question. There are so many questions. So interviews like a dance. You lead a dance. You need to lead that conversation to your strengths. So understand what your strengths are. What are you good at? What are you not good at? You can basically manipulate an interview. You start up, normally all interviews start with a question like, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. This is the most crucial question, right? Because it gives you a chance to put some things out there. Two reasons why this is good. A little bit about yourself is giving you a chance to talk about things that you're comfortable with, right? So it's setting the tone for that interview. If you're comfortable, if you're a little nervous, runway candidates tend to perform a little better. So make sure that you're using that time to organize your thoughts and saying things that matter. And the second thing is, it gives you a chance to, you know, put some spin on the conversation. So if somebody asks me a little bit about myself, I tell them about who I am, what I like doing. So I talk to them about being a storyteller and how I enjoy marketing, the kind of companies I've worked with. And then I might end on something like, so recently I've been working on kind of domain, and then I'll just end there. Okay. The next question,
you want to get to that. Yeah.
Exactly. So the next question has to be, oh, tell me a little bit more about that. Just go there. Right. But
it's kind of like you guide the conversation.
It's exactly that. You need to guide the conversation. And you need to understand what is a good thing for you, right? What makes sense for you. If my academics are poor, so if I draw attention to my academics in any way, I'm screwed. Like the minute they look at my, I know that I don't even get a foot in the door. I need to guide the conversation away from it. So realizing that is important. Another thing, especially for campus placement, is to make sure that you differentiate. See, what people don't realize is, recruitment, I don't just go to one college. I'm going to a series of colleges. It's like it's a drive for us. So we're going to colleges in Trivandrum, CT, TKM, we might be going to Bangalore, we might be going to Coimbatore, whatever, right? So 10 colleges. We actually went to some, I think 8 or 9 colleges. We met a total of around 2,400 kids. 2,400 kids over the span of 10 days or 8 days, something like that. There is no way you'll remember. There is no way you'll remember, because every college has 200 candidates who look exactly the same. They're dressed the same way. They are presented themselves like they all look the same. They give a resume which looks exactly the same. Every resume that comes out from our college has I can tell you the format, like it's by heart. Gray sanam, text, gray sanam, text, and then they talk about exactly the same things. Everybody's got an Excel. Everybody's got and then XYZ club, pick from one of these options. So the problem is, how do I differentiate? How do I remember, oh, this is the candidate? Oh, Nasrin spoke very well. I remember that, but I need to get something, a retention value created. So your resume, something as simple as adding some color in there, or maybe add a photograph, right? A photograph, oh, I remember this person. Or maybe your resume has an extra introduction that other people don't have. You have to realize that in that interview situation, you're going up against 200 of your friends, and they're all competitors. They're all vying for the same 5 spots. So you have to set yourself apart from them. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. PC students and now, PC people will tell you otherwise, but I'm telling you from a recruiter's perspective, differentiating is always better.
Okay. So that's a really useful tip for all of us, I guess. And do any of our audiences have any questions about it? We're almost reaching the end. I'm done with the questions on my part. Okay, Hisham, we've got did Hisham raise his hand before or Pinay raise his hand? I can't seem to remember. Okay, sure. Shoot your question. Yes, Hisham.
Okay, so I have one question that I personally have been thinking about for a while. It's that placement like, okay, placements in particular, right? Placements like, do you look at the skill set more or do you look at the personality? You said it's all about the attitude. So, for example,
go on. You were saying, complete this question.
Okay, yeah. So, basically, it it doesn't necessarily mean that you will have skills to put on your resume, right? So, what do you measure that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's about understanding that. See, again, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, you have to realize that everybody is going to present Excel, couple of clubs and stuff like that. Upon adinda basis, value advantage. Nobody's going to stand a big advantage. It's about what you can realize out of it. So, what has Excel taught you? Has it taught you to, I don't know, compose an email? Has it taught you to organize an event, for example? Skills, and then if you can demonstrate that. So again, this plays a part in the interview, right? You put this on your resume. Resume is like a description, right? You put facts in there, but you need to be able to say a story with this. So it's not about just having a personality. Personality and I've not done anything, it's not going to get you anywhere. Skills and I can't talk anything about it, that's also not going to get it. It's actually a mix of the two. You don't have to be a poet and a storyteller and be able to create this wonderful tale out of it. But what have you done and how is it going to help you? How is this going to help the company? If you can present it, right? If I talk about a marketing role, what I'm trying to if I'm being interviewed for a marketing role, what I try to present is, and the skill set, how is that going to help your company get to a better place? How is that going to help your company? So again, going back to marketing itself, I'm trying to demonstrate that skill, understanding what they need and seeing how I can fit there, how I can differentiate there. The kind of approach works best. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, one more doubt. Okay, I said this is the last one. Right. So, how would you suggest to help out to improve skills in related to marketing?
So, if you want to get into marketing, there are many ways to do it, right? You can be a writer and you can be on the creative side of it. You can, or you can be a designer and be on the creative side of it. You can be a analytics, so you can measure the performance. You can learn a certain set of tools and skills. So online marketing, social media marketing, these are all entry points for you. So it depends on what you're interested in. If you're somebody who's got a flair for writing, you've got the ability to write, then my advice is write more. The more you write, the better you get. And once you become and start analyzing your work, understand how you can bring more structure to it, how you can bring a better narrative, something that fits well with that. There's a customer who needs something, and then you're telling a story. Try to see if the story really answers those questions. How really approach it, and eventually you'll get to a place where you can say that I can actually use a particular brand story in the parameter. Or if you're into if you what you find interesting in social media or some kind of online metrics, so SEO or something like that. You can learn a certain set of tools like that will help you do those kind of activities. So SEO Generator, there are certain keyword research tools under, performance tools, monitoring tools under, Google Keyword Planner, stuff like that. So you can learn that and then get into marketing. But the important thing is you don't stay there. Like it's not like you have to understand how this can lead to your growth. What next? Where can this go? How can I contribute to the larger picture? So it comes back to something I was telling Rishikesh some time ago. There's this different types of learning that you can do. So the first level of learning is called a T model. Okay, so T learning is when you have, so you know the alphabet T, right? There's a horizontal.
Yeah.
And this horizontal is like a broad knowledge of different things. So you have a broad knowledge of few things, and then you've got a vertical thing, which is like depth. So you develop depth on any one thing. So that's like your entry. So that's entry level knowledge. That's like the beginner. So you know one thing well, and you know a bunch of a bunch of things. Then you have something called a pi model, like number Roman numeral pi 3.14. So that's like two verticals. So you specialize in something more. And then there's something called a comb, where you have multiple specializations. So as you grow, as you progress in your career, you will shift from a T to a pi and then to a comb. So if you look at it, like somebody who's an executive, like a CEO kind of guy, he'll always have this comb kind of thing. He knows a lot of things very well, and then everything a little bit. Right? Somebody who's a senior manager or somebody who's like a manager kind of thing, they know a couple of things quite well, and then they know a little bit of everything. It's about understanding how you can get from T to pi to comb, and that's different for everybody. So there's no hard and fast solution.
Okay, Hisham, yeah, I think we've answered Hisham's question. We've got like one more question, but before we go on to that, I'd just like to remind all of our viewers to fill out the feedback forms, please. And now, okay, other question from Ruben.
Yeah, one second. Sure. Yeah, Nasrin, your question. Is there like a hard limit on this meeting, like 1 hour?
I don't think there is one.
Hey, Shaija ma'am. Hi, Shaija ma'am. She's messaged me.
Okay. Okay. So I
Hi, ma'am.
Hi. Okay.
How are you?
I joined very late. Okay. Sorry. Okay. You continue. Okay.
Yeah, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Aravind, we can go till 6. It's all right.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll get to Ruben's question then. Can you share a memory from an interview that was like really unique and different from the usual? Okay.
I've had people who see, I can't tell you like one specific interview simply because you're meeting 2,000 students at once. Okay, other impossible, no? But I know that there have been many instances where there have been people who, like during the interview or while sitting with me, and they ask who I am and what I do, kind of somehow, and they say that, this is what I wanted to do. And he's totally like somebody, my parents are asking me to go for this, or everybody is going. Okay. So there are people who wanted to try something different, and there's somebody from our college who, I think it was Prem, the junior, 2-3 years. In 2019, apparently he was there for the TISMO interview.
All right.
And he told me much later that so he sat for a technical role. He didn't make it in the interview, but before that I had interacted with him, and for some reason he got enamored with sales after that. And he reached out to me saying that, see, dude, I was this guy and interviewed them. I'm like, sorry, I don't remember at all. But he's like, yeah, but that interaction really, gave me a like it gave him a push. So he started exploring a career in sales and stuff. So he's doing pretty well in that.
Okay.
That's been very memorable for me, but I don't know if it's memorable for other people. That's different.
That's good to know. Okay, Nasrin, she had raised her hand, but it was a mistake, so let's not go to her. So, yeah, we're open to questions. Does anyone else have any questions here? Chat or raise your hands, anything? Okay, so I think it's done. So with that, we have reached the end of the second day of RYB. Thank you so much, Aravind, for spending your time with us and for being such a wonderful guest. Like, I had a lot of fun interacting with you, and I'm sure that our audience did too. Namku korre questions chat le varandarno. Hisham here asked a lot of questions. He raised his hand and answered.
Hisham is going to start a company based on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's got like all the advices from you. one final thing. ഒരു സീനിയർ എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ ഒരു XMEC എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ ജൂനിയേഴ്സിന്റെ അടുത്ത് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള എന്താ അരവിന്ദനുള്ളത്? Just ഒറ്റൊരു സെന്റൻസിൽ പറയണേ. Just one thing you would like to share with us.
Okay, that's really tough.
Okay.
One thing that I can share with my juniors.
Like
I would say
it can be anything that you want to tell us. We're all here now.
Okay. Maybe it's like this. When it's about trying things that are not your cup of tea, like comfort zone, right? Everybody is comfortable in college. College la namukku group mentality undu. Everybody is doing a certain set of things, and that varies. Maybe like there are 5 things, and all 70 people in your class are doing those 5 things. But it's very easy to get segmented, and just be in that comfort zone. But what I've seen is like nammal the movie the porthekku പോകുമ്പോൾ when you're in a work environment and all, to really grow you have to come out of your comfort zone. Now this is something that everybody generally ellarum parayuna oru karyana. Growth happens outside the comfort zone, and it's very true. But നമ്മുടെ കോളേജ് ഭയങ്കര ചെറിയൊരു കോളേജാണ്, റൈറ്റ്? ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ്സ് ഗോട്ട് അഡ്വാൻറ്റേജ് ഡിസഡ്വാൻറ്റേജ്. യു ഹാവ് പേഴ്സണൽ കണക്ഷൻസ് അറ്റ് ദ സെയിം ടൈം. ഇറ്റ്സ് വെരി ഈസി ടു ലൈക്ക് ജസ്റ്റ് റിമെയിൻ ഇൻ ദോസ് കണക്ഷൻസ്. നമുക്ക് പുറത്തേക്ക് പോയി ഒരു സംഭവം ചെയ്യുക, or just to get and start interacting with the group of people. I'm not talking about career wise, but even otherwise, on a personal level to grow ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് it's something that you should consciously do. I'll only interact with one set of people. I'll only do what is asked of me. I'll only do this. And പുതിയതായിട്ടൊന്നും എക്സ്പ്ലോർ ചെയ്യില്ല, പുതിയതായിട്ടൊന്നും പഠിക്കും. അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു മെന്റാലിറ്റിയിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ ഒരിക്കലും കടന്നു പോകരുത്. That would be the only piece of advice that I can give you. Just try out different things. See if it works out for you. See, we are at the age where you can do all these things. കുറെ കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പറ്റില്ല, but you can do it right now. And if you're able to make something useful out of it, great. If not, it's just a learning experience. At least you can walk away, think back, interaction, you can think, hey, I tried this.
Absolutely. So thank you, Arvind. Thank you so much.
Sure. Happy to have been part of this.
Lastly, I'd like to thank this wonderful audience for making this session this interactive and extremely fun for us. And I'm confident that all of you enjoyed today's session and are very, very excited for our final day of RYB. That's tomorrow. So stay tuned, everybody, and let's all meet again, Nala. So goodbye.
Nasreen, can I add one thing? Like if there's any specific questions that people have about this, you can just send that to me or put me in touch with them. I'm happy to help out. This is something I really love doing, so I'm completely open to it. Okay, great. All right, thanks so much, guys. I had a lot of fun. Bye bye.